The Willowbrook Inn stood nestled at the edge of a quiet town, its historic charm beckoning travelers from all corners. As I parked my car in front of the centuries-old building, the sight of its time-worn architecture filled me with a sense of intrigue and nostalgia. The wooden beams seemed to whisper stories of the past, and the ivy-clad walls exuded an air of mystery. The innkeeper, a gentle-looking old man with a welcoming smile, greeted me at the entrance. He handed me an ornate key with a small brass tag engraved with Room 13. I chuckled nervously at the coincidence, but he assured me that it was just a quirk of history and superstition. As I settled into my room, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to dance to the rhythm of the swaying trees outside my window. The once inviting inn took on an eerie appearance, as though it were a portal to another time. As darkness shrouded the inn, I began to feel an inexplicable unease. Every crack of the floorboards and rustly of the curtains sent shivers down my spine. The antica furniture, though elegant, seemed to carry the weight of untold stories, casting long, ghostly shadows on the walls. Deciding to retire for the night, I drew the heavy curtains shut, attempting to shut out the unsettling atmosphere. But my efforts were in vain, as I awoke to the sound of hushed whispering voices that seemed to resonate from within the walls themselves. The air grew cold, and I could see my breath misting in the air. My heart raced as I lit a candle, the soft glow casting elongated shadows on the walls. Just then, a chilling gust of wind rushed through the room, extinguishing the flame. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my phone, only to realize that I had no signal. The inn's walls seemed to close in on me, the heavy silence punctuated only by the sound of my own frantic breaths. And then, in the flickering darkness, I saw it. A shadowy figure standing at the foot of the bed. Its form was indistinct, but its hollow eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light. My voice caught in my throat, and I was paralyzed with fear. It seemed to reach out to me, beckoning me into the abyss. With a surge of adrenaline, I tore myself away and stumbled toward the door. The hallway stretched before me like a labyrinth, and the air grew colder with each step. My heart pounded in my chest as I finally burst into the lobby, where the innkeeper stood, his expression grave. I babbled incoherently, recounting the chilling encounter. He nodded solemnly, revealing that the Willowbrook Inn was known for its haunted history. The figure I had seen was said to be the restless spirit of a traveler who had met a tragic fate within these walls many decades ago. I left the Willowbrook Inn that night, the chilling memories etched into my mind. The echoes of that eerie night still haunt my dreams, a constant reminder of the thin veil that separates the living from the realm of restless spirits. The road stretched before me like an infinite ribbon, its asphalt disappearing into the horizon. With each passing mile, my journey grew more exhilarating, the sense of adventure mingling with the thrill of exploration. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself at a crossroads, a decision to make. My GPS indicated an alternate route, a road less traveled, obscured by the dense embrace of towering trees. Curiosity got the better of me, and I veered onto the forgotten path. The initial excitement gave way to unease as the surroundings transformed into an eerily quiet realm. Nightfall arrived swiftly, the sky painted in shades of deep indigo. The road became treacherous, winding its way through a dense forest. The air grew heavy with fog, and the branches of trees seemed to claw at the sky as if warning me to turn back. The fog thickened, enveloping the road in an impenetrable haze. Panic began to claw at my throat as I realized that I was lost, my GPS unable to penetrate the dense shroud. The trees seemed to close in around me, whispering secrets that I couldn't decipher. A sense of foreboding weighed heavily on my chest as I continued to drive through the foggy abyss. Shadows danced at the periphery of my vision, and every rustle of leaves sent my heart racing. My phone had no signal, leaving me isolated and vulnerable in the heart of this eerie wilderness. My headlights suddenly illuminated an old building by the side of the road. It was as if it had materialized out of the mist, its windows shattered and its walls crumbling with age. A desperate hope surged within me as I pulled over, thinking that perhaps someone inside could offer me directions. With a hesitant breath, I pushed open the creaking door. The room inside was dimly lit by a lone candle, casting flickering shadows on the peeling wallpaper. My voice trembled as I called out, and a shiver ran down my spine as my words echoed eerily in the silence. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form indistinct in the dim light. Its face was obscured by a hood, and a sensation of dread settled over me. Its eyes bore into mine with a strange intensity, and I was overcome by an unsettling sense of familiarity. The figure beckoned me to enter, its voice a haunting whisper that seemed to seep into my very soul. Against my better judgment, I took a hesitant step forward, the door closing behind me with a resounding thud. Panic surged within me as I turned, realizing that I was alone with this enigmatic presence. The room seemed to warp and shift, the walls closing in around me as the figure began to chant in a language I couldn't comprehend. A cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the lone candle and plunging the space into darkness. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled for my phone, the screen casting a faint glow that barely illuminated my surroundings. The chanting grew louder, its rhythm like an eerie heartbeat, and the air seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the chanting ceased. The room was plunged into an oppressive silence, broken only by the sound of my own labored breaths. The darkness seemed to lift, and I found myself standing alone in the room, the figure nowhere to be seen. With a surge of terror, I sprinted for the door and flung it open, stumbling out into the foggy night. My heart raced as I retraced my steps, praying to escape the clutches of that sinister place. Eventually, I emerged from the fog, the familiar stretch of highway reappearing before me. As I drove away, my mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. What had I encountered in that abandoned building? The memory of the figure's chant and the inexplicable darkness haunted my thoughts, a chilling reminder that not all travelers are destined to find their way back. The road stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt winding through the countryside. I had embarked on this journey to escape the mundane and embrace the freedom of the open road. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch into eternity. As dusk settled in, the landscape transformed, the warm hues of daylight giving way to the cool embrace of twilight. My headlights pierced the encroaching darkness as I followed the curves of the road. It was in this moment, when the solitude of the highway seemed absolute, that I saw her. A figure emerged from the shadows, a solitary hitchhiker standing by the side of the road. Her presence was unexpected, a lone silhouette against the backdrop of the twilight. My initial apprehension was replaced by a feeling of empathy. After all, I too had embarked on this journey seeking solitude and connection. I pulled over, the crunch of gravel beneath my tires signaling my arrival. The hitchhiker, cloaked in a hooded jacket, approached my car with deliberate steps. Her face was obscured, hidden beneath the shadow of her hood. I rolled down the window, extending an offer of assistance. "Need a lift?" I asked, my voice betraying a hint of unease. The hitchhiker nodded, her movements deliberate. Without a word, she climbed into the passenger seat, her presence an enigma that hung heavily in the air. The car's interior was illuminated by the soft glow of the dashboard lights, casting an eerie pall over the scene. As we continued along the desolate highway, I attempted to strike up a conversation. I asked where she was headed, hoping to break the awkward silence that had settled between us. Her responses were curt, her tone distant. It was as though she was averse to revealing too much about herself. I caught glimpses of her profile, the faint light casting a faint glow on her features. Her eyes, obscured by the darkness within the car, held a weight that seemed far beyond her years. My curiosity mingled with a growing sense of unease, as though I had invited something unknown into my world. I had intended to exit the highway at the next town, but the hitchhiker directed me onto an isolated road that seemed to disappear into the wilderness. Alarm bells rang in the back of my mind, but my sense of adventure urged me to continue. I cast a glance at her, questioning the change in direction. Her response was cryptic. "This is the way," she said softly, her voice carrying an air of inevitability. The road grew narrower, the trees leaning in on both sides, as if eager to envelop us in their grasp. Darkness descended rapidly, the moonlight obscured by a canopy of leaves. My heart began to race as I realized that we were venturing deeper into the unknown, the silence between us becoming oppressive. A strange tension settled in the car, a palpable aura of unease that seemed to stem from the hitchhiker herself. The shadows danced across her features, casting her face in a haunting chiaroscuro. It was then that I noticed her murmuring something under her breath, a series of words that held an otherworldly cadence. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel as a gust of wind swept through the car, extinguishing the dashboard lights. Panic surged within me as I fumbled for the controls, my efforts in vain. In the darkness, I felt her gaze fixed on me, her presence suffocating in its intensity. Car, her back turned toward me. In the faint glow of the dashboard lights, I could see that her hands were raised, her fingers tracing intricate patterns in the air. It was as though she was weaving something, a spell that defied comprehension. My heart raced as I gripped the steering wheel, my instincts screaming at me to flee. But a morbid curiosity held me in place, my eyes locked on the enigmatic scene unfolding before me. The air grew charged, the very atmosphere vibrating with an energy I couldn't explain. And then her voice rose in a haunting chant, the words reverberating through the car. They were foreign, ancient, a language that seemed to beckon forces from beyond the veil. Fear gnawed at my mind as I realized that I was trapped in a situation that defied logic and reason. I attempted to speak, to demand an explanation, but my voice was drowned out by the cacophony of the chant. The shadows danced in response, converging on the hitchhiker as if drawn to her power. I watched in horror as the shadows seemed to fuse with her, creating an unsettling silhouette that defied the laws of nature. As the chant reached its crescendo, the darkness erupted in a blinding burst of light. The shockwave slammed into the car, and my world was consumed by a swirling vortex of colors and sensations. Time seemed to warp, reality bending and contorting until it became unrecognizable. When I regained my senses, I found myself back on the highway, my car parked on the shoulder. The hitchhiker was gone, leaving behind only the echo of her enigmatic presence. The night air was still, the only evidence of the surreal events that had unfolded being the rapid beating of my heart. As I drove away, my mind was a maelstrom of confusion and disbelief. What had I encountered on that desolate road? The memory of the chant, the shadows, and the inexplicable burst of light haunted my thoughts, leaving me questioning the boundaries of reality itself. To this day, the memory of that night lingers, a chilling reminder that the world is far more complex and mysterious than we can fathom. The sinister hitchhiker, with her cryptic presence and eerie chant, forever remains an enigma, an encounter that defied all rational explanation. If you enjoyed those stories, don't forget, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. See you in another one.